This is Darren Johnson. I'm going to be the instructor for this course. This is a boot camp for people that want to not only hone their InDesign skills. You might be at one level or another level. You might know a little bit, you might know nothing. That doesn't matter, but it's also a course on how to teach it to others. So if you are a journalism instructor or you're running a class that requires layout using Adobe InDesign, or if you are like on the staff of a school newspaper, something like that, these are skills that you can pass on to your fellow colleagues and students and people, like that. So that's the goal of the course. I've been teaching this course at the college level for many years, and I think I have it down at this point where I can teach instructors on how to teach their classes. So my goal this summer, or whenever you're taking this course, I'm going to post these online. You can go at your own pace, is to have 10 lessons that you can use to teach your students. And maybe if your skills aren't, up there yet, you could also learn in the process. This is a little bit different than any other InDesign instruction. I'll give you a certificate at the end if you want. Just send me an email. I'll send you a certificate. And you can use that for professional purposes too, and help you along. But this is different than other InDesign courses in that I'm a journalist. I'm a longtime journalist. I own local newspapers. Here's one of them, and I've been doing layout since the '90s. So I've gone through the whole process of learning different software over time, and the various software. I do believe InDesign, you're going to have some pushback, like students wanting to use Canva or some other program. Or some people, maybe in your department want to use like a Microsoft publisher type thing. You're going to get some pushback, but InDesign is considered, a serious layout program, more serious than those programs I mentioned. And it also gives you a sense of ownership if you use InDesign versus using a program that everyone has. If you use a program everyone has, then why are you needed? So it also gives you that exclusivity that you might need. Anyway, let's get to it. So lesson 1, this is an advanced layout of a newspaper, and we'll get to this by the end of the semester. But for now, let's just start with class 1. All right, so you'd open InDesign, and this is version 2025. I don't think there's any major difference between this and 2024 in case you haven't updated yet. I think they've put some AI features in 25 that didn't exist in 24, but let's not worry about that now. So you'd go to File, New, or Control N on a PC or Command N on a Mac. I'm on a Mac. And it doesn't matter, the PC Mac versions are pretty much the same. I've taught in both types of labs. It's just whether I get confused sometimes, whether it's the control key or the command key or that type of thing when I'm going back and forth. Sometimes my muscle memory wants to press on something else. But right now I'm on a Mac. All this past semester I taught on PCs. So whatever. Give me whatever. All right, so a newspaper size is usually tabloid-ish. That newspaper I just showed you is kind of an odd tabloid. I think it's more like the printable size is 9.5 by 10, and the page size is 11 by 11, I think, or 11 by 12. And those are the two terms you need to know. You need to know page size, and you need to know printable area. The printable area is the area that you have to work in because the printer, if you're going to print, you could also make e-newspapers, but you need margins, in other words. So for now, let's select tabloid because this is a pretty common size. And you see tabloid selected. A tabloid is 11 by 17 inches. Make sure it says inches over here. So your students are going to say, oh, I made it 11 by 17. What's wrong? Well, you didn't make it inches. So now you can give it a title if you want. Sample project, whatever you want to call it. This is lesson 1. So you're going to have to get students or your colleagues or whomever acclimated to the program and all the tools. And this is a good first lesson to do things with, is just to work on a blank page. So I'm going to keep this to, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And this should give you enough fodder for a 45-minute, hour-long class so that they can practice. Lesson 2, we'll move on to creating an actual mock newspaper. But this is just lesson 1, just getting used to the tools. All right, so we're only going to do 1 page for now. Typical margins, they give you 0.5 inches all the way around. You might want to just to teach the students, and most newspapers don't have this. Most newspapers are a little bit, it might be 0.25 or something. You might want to just play around with this a little. So let's make the side margins less than the top and bottom margins, for example. So if I put 0.25 here, it changes them all. But if I click this chain button and unlink it, then you can individually make margins. Margins are important. So inside, outside, we'll put 0.25, and the rest will have 0.5. Don't worry about gutters for now, but the default gutter isn't bad. I'll tell you what a gutter is when we get to it. The gutter, it's the space between columns. But right now we just have a 1-column layout. That's all we're worried about, so it doesn't matter. The rest is okay. It's just 1 page. And we're good to go. So hit create. All right, so here's a big tabloid page. You might have local newspapers in your town or something that kind of use this size. It's a little bit longish. Here's the size I was showing you before. Let's see where it is. Somewhere in here. Here it is. We do a smaller tabloid size at the local printer for this newspaper. So it's a little less than sample project. But you can see that here is, I'll close this box. Here's your layout. All right, so class 1, you should go over once you've created an open page, and you can see how they made the margins less on the sides than at the top. This is a pretty good layout margin-wise. If you are going to actually print, you have to talk to your printer and use those terms I just mentioned. So write it down. If you're going to print, ask them what is the page size, all right, and what is the printable area, and then set your margins accordingly. So if they say the page size is 11 by 17, that's what a tabloid is. If not, you have to adjust it and create a custom page. And if the printable area is, in this case, 16 and a half, or 10 and a half wide, because it was 11 and we took a quarter and a quarter, so 10 and a half by 16 high, and because we have a half and a half here. So that's your printable area. You can see the little purple line that's going around. All right, first class, I'd get students used to, and we're going to get way more complex over the 10 classes. So you're going to learn every single thing you need to know, and I'll give you templates for everything. So you can even use my templates in your class if you want. Or you can have the template as the finished project and deconstruct it. So let's say I give you a template of an old-timey newspaper, and you can have that, but you can also open up, you can cut everything and then repaste it in so it looks like you know what you're pasting in the stuff as needed. So let's see how far we can get here. In this age of AI, it's kind of nice to teach a course where they can't really cheat in the course. So that's another nice feature of this. While there are AI features in Adobe products, they're not that great. So things still have to be done by hand. All right, so these are your main tools you'll go over in your first class. Don't worry about this thing that says text wrap. That's just a thing I use a lot, and we'll get into text wraps in a little bit. But here are the main tools. They might be slightly different on your computer. You can customize this bar. The selection tool the black arrow. When I'm teaching a class, I don't say like go to the selection tool. I say go to the black arrow, and that lets you. It's the main arrow you have for moving objects on a page. Everything on a page is an object. Text boxes, photo boxes, they're all objects. So you'll need that black arrow. I don't use these two a lot, but the selection tool sometimes allows you to do things within a box, and the page tool if you had multiple pages going, but we only have one page. Gap tool don't use. I guess it's for your gutters. I don't really use it. A lot of these I don't use. Type tool is extremely important, so I'll say go to the big T on your toolbar, the type tool. And lines. A lot of people like lines. We'll do some lines. And rectangular frame tool is really important because that's where you import your photos. So those are probably the most important ones here. And there's some others, if you need to zoom in or not. A big advantage, and you might want to not do this on a desktop sometimes. I buy the bigger laptops, 16, 17-inch laptops. And if you have like a tracking type mouse, one of those trackpads, you can zoom in really easily, zoom out really easily using the trackpad just by pinching, which is super nice. Or you could buy one for a desktop computer if you prefer that kind of mouse. I kind of like it, so that way you don't have to worry about the little zooming and all that so much. Save you a few seconds here or there. All right, so let's start with the type tool, the big T. And generally you stretch it, click and hold, and you stretch it. And here's where you can talk about the parts of a newspaper with students. So you stretch it, and you can say, hey, let's create a banner. And we're going to create an old-timey newspaper in the next lesson. But this is a good first class. Let's create a banner. Give your newspaper a name. The Daily Newspaper. Give your newspaper a name. Here's where you can talk to students about not using default fonts. A lot of students, in the case of Macintosh, over here they give you Minion Pro as the default, and I forget what it is on PCs, probably something like it. So they give you some default font. And here's where you can talk to students about using other fonts. You might want to talk to your IT department about getting more fonts installed on your computer, because a lot of times IT departments, they don't give you a lot of fonts. So they don't give you a lot to choose from, or they're just like Impact and the same old fonts that you see everywhere. So you might want some different fonts. And here's where you can explain, you can get a little bit into typography, and you can explain the difference between a serifed font and a sans serif font. So you can see, and usually over here you can see centering. Now if you don't have all these tools, go to Windows, and you can see the various tools that you can add. So if you don't have all the same tools that I have, look what I have checked off. Those are the tools I have checked off. Don't worry about down here. These are just various things that are open. But these are the things I have checked off. I'm not sure what math expressions is. It's new. I don't do math. All right. So you can talk about serifed fonts versus sans serif fonts. In case you don't know, a serifed font has little flourishes on it, like, let's pick, that's a little too fancy though. And you could also talk about taste, like what's good, what's good taste. I'm trying to pick one that's an obvious serifed font. Oh, that one was pretty good. All right. The word daily looks like it's spelled wrong. All right. And you can see that It's just an odd looking word. So the daily newspaper. So you can see this is a serifed font. It has like the little flourishes on the Y and the W and the N. See those little flourishes? That's a very exaggerated serifed font. A sans serif font doesn't have the flourishes. So you can talk about the two main kinds of fonts. Here's a sans serif font. It doesn't really have those flourishes. So what would you pick as a banner for your paper? You might want to have, a lot of newspapers have like really like a gothic looking, old timey font. So you might want to go through your fonts and have them pick something that looks really old timey. And just to play around with fonts, just to get used to it. It's mostly an exercise. And pick something that looks like a really old-timey newspaper. So you'd go through it. I use Footlight a lot. Oh wait, there's one up here that's really old-timey looking, Cristoforo. I actually use this. I'm gonna click it, but the reason why it's not showing up is because the box is too small. And I'm gonna use it. All right, so that is an actual old-timey font that I do use on one of my newspapers because it's an old newspaper. So they can get used to writing a banner, the daily newspaper, and then I'd get them used to using some other fonts. So here's a good explanation as to when to use certain types of fonts: serif, sans serif, etc. So I'd have them work with other text boxes and talk about the parts of a newspaper. So that's a banner, and this is a headline. And then you can start to talk about sizes. So, all right, now headlines, in case you don't know, headlines, usually on a page you don't want more than 3 fonts or so, give or take, 3 or 4 fonts. The banner, which is, a lot of people call it the masthead, that could be any font in the world, because it's usually based on old woodcuts of newspapers from pre-computer era. So it could be anything in the world. But headlines are typically, they can be either serifed or sans serifed, but they just need to be consistent throughout your newspaper. So I've talked to graphic designers, and either is okay. And then you might get into sizes too, like font sizes. Let me get to some fonts here. It's going through all these fonts that don't have a translation. All right. And once you pick one, Rockwell seems to be popular among students. Once you have one, you can come up with sizes. All right, your front page headline, that can be sometimes pretty big. And again, you're going to want to center this. So go to paragraph center, and you're going to want to center it. Now, your main headline can be big, like, Dewey defeats Truman, Titanic sinks, World War II begins. You've seen those famous headlines, man lands on the moon. You've seen those types of headlines before. That could be big on the homepage. But typical size, and maybe grab a pencil if you haven't already and write some of this stuff down. Typical size headline is 32 to 40 points. So, but your main headline can be a little bit bigger than that. So here's 60's kind of pushing it, but let's go to 55, 54. All right, so here's a headline. This is a headline. So now you get to talk about the types of headlines. And you can learn to move these boxes around by grabbing the black arrow and moving boxes around. And then you could talk about other parts of the paper and things that have to do with text boxes, depending on how fast your class is moving. Now, one mistake a lot of instructors make is they think students are good with technology. They're not. They don't know anything more than anyone else when it comes to these programs. They've never used these programs before. So just because you throw a program at them doesn't mean they're going to know it. You're going to have to walk around the room and help each individual with different problems. I mentioned the problem where some put pixels instead of, or they put picas instead of inches, and then they wonder why their page is super huge or super small, or a photo or something. I'll say, no, you have to make it in inches, or you have to switch this around or that around. So, or this font, why is this font not working? Well, maybe the text box needs to be bigger or something like that. You're going to have to walk around the room. Everyone's going to have a different problem. And you can stay like 1 or 2 steps ahead of the class just by being, doing this course. So you'll be a few steps ahead of the class. And then that helps you with your authority in the class because they'll look to you as the expert on this in this subject. And you gain respect with younger people too if you know your technology. So that's another plus of it. Anyway, let's just work on date lines and maybe bylines or something. So you can work on a date line here. They can work on various aspects, and I think this might be good for them learning how to make boxes that each box is its own element. So you could put like volume 1, issue 1, and give that a font. And usually this would be a sans serif font. So I'm just going to pick a random sans serif. And let me go back to the top. Here we go. Franklin Gothic Demi. It's popular. And I think we want a size bigger than 12. Make it 14. And we got that right here. And now I'm going to make the box smaller because it's just an element that's flush left. This one isn't centered. I'm going to duplicate it. So copy paste, for example. There is a duplicate button, but I won't worry with that right now. Copy paste. Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V, in case you don't know. We'll make this the actual date line. Whatever it is, July 3rd, 2015. Pick a date. This should be centered because it's in the center, so center that. And then we're going to make something flush right. So we'll do one more. Copy paste. Control C, Control V, Command C, Command V, depending if you're on a Mac. We'll make this flush right. So you can see down here under paragraph, it's flush right, and we'll give this a price. Only $2 or something. Only $2. So we gave it a price, a date line, volume number, issue number. And this gives us some practice, teaches students to eyeball and to use their judgment and to use the guides to help track them so that there is enough white space, because I found that students do tend to crowd things, like they crowd things like that. That's crowded. So give it a little white space. So that's what I would do for lesson 1. I would just work on text boxes and maybe create this much of a layout. I'll hit save on this and I'll post it in the Google Classroom and you can play around with it. But I think this is a good start for class 1. I think that will give you enough to do during class 1. You can put other little text boxes on there, but they can start to think about text boxes. Other things you could do, we'll do in the next lesson: bylines, body copy, maybe subheads, some other terms. So that way they also learn newspaper terms as they are doing it. Well, anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for listening.